In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some interesting trade rumors regarding the Montreal Canadiens and their desire to add a top four left shot defenseman. We'll get into all the latest rumors coming up next. So welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some interesting Montreal Canadiens trade rumors I want to discuss with you here today and see what they might be up to try to bolster their blue line as we get deeper into the NHL season. Of course, the Montreal Canadiens have had a decent start, and it is fair to say, I think, based on their team, that the left shot defense is still the area of weakness that they would probably like to most improve upon out of all the areas of their team. Now, we have a couple of different sources, a couple of different articles here to reference today. One comes from The Athletic and Kevin Kurz, who covers the San Jose Sharks, and the other information comes from Elliot Friedman's latest 31 Thoughts article as well. Now let's first of all get started with the fact that the Montreal Canadiens have been heavily scouting the San Jose Sharks, and according to Kevin Kurz, they've been watching the Sharks very closely, and his belief is that they're likely looking at defenseman Marc Edward Vlasic. Now obviously the Sharks got off to a slow start, and as I've mentioned in other rumors and other NHL trade type videos, when teams struggle, obviously other teams kind of come calling to see if they're looking to make some moves or make some changes, and obviously the Sharks were in that boat. Now of course they've since turned things around. They've won their last 3 straight games with victories over Chicago, Calgary, and Carolina. So obviously they might be a little hesitant to make a move here right now, but it is still early in the season. There's going to be lots of scouting going on, and there might not be necessarily any big trades or anything for a little bit of time. It just really depends. If things get turned around for a team, they likely won't make a move, but if things spiral in the opposite direction, or if they have a glaring need where they need to make a trade, then obviously things will pick up and rumors will persist. So I guess we will see how things go. But if you take a look at the Sharks, obviously they're really heavy in the blue line between Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns. They both make a lot of money, and they both eat up a lot of minutes on that blue line. And Marc Edward Vlasic at one point in time was the number one defenseman on that team, kind of became number one or number two with Brent Burns. And now with Karlsson there, it really pushes him further down. He makes $7 million, and obviously he's just not playing as big of a role as he used to be. Now, of course, taking a look at Montreal, of course, I can understand their desire and their need to want to add a left shot defenseman. It's no secret that this offseason they were very interested in one of the top free agents out there, and that was left shot defenseman Jake Gardiner, formerly of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but of course he did not sign with Montreal. I'm not really sure they got too far with negotiations, and of course he ultimately ended up signing with the Carolina Hurricanes, but it was confirmed that they definitely had interest in Gardiner, and discussions were had ultimately trying to get him to sign with their franchise. Now there's also been a lot of talk, like I said, even before that was the area of the team that Marc Bergevin most likely wanted to address the most. And so far, he hasn't been able to do that to the degree that he would like. Now, if you take a look at their blue line, they have a lot of younger players still trying to get their feet wet and still trying to become regular NHL players. If you take a look at their blue line, obviously the guys like Riley and Kulak and Mete, obviously they're just not quite that ready for that bigger responsibility here as of yet. So an upgrade in that area makes a lot of sense for Montreal. Now, the Montreal Canadiens do have a ton of forwards, and they have a lot of young, promising forwards with a lot of potential. They also still have a lot of draft picks and a lot of other decent prospects that are not yet in the NHL or AHL that are still playing junior or overseas as well. So they do have a lot of trade chips that they could use to lure in a top four defenseman. So certainly Montreal is well equipped from that standpoint. The salary cap situation isn't too bad. They have over $6 million in space right now. And of course, if they were to make a trade and trade at least something off their NHL roster, that number could increase. So to take on a player like Vlasic certainly would be more than feasible, with his average annual value currently being $7 million. Now, of course, Marc Edward Vlasic has a full no-move clause, so obviously any trade out of San Jose would have to be something that he would approve, and depending on how things are going with the Sharks, he very well might not be interested in a transaction going to any team. It's really difficult to say, so obviously discussions would have to be held between him and his agent likely before things ever got too far to see if there was even any interest, and I don't imagine Doug Wilson would go down that road unless he was ready to make a trade and certainly really ready to shake things up. And of course, Vlasic's been with the Sharks a long time now. He's 32 years old. He'll be 33 come March, so he'll be 33 before the season's out. Like I said, his average annual value for his cap hit is $7 million, and he has 6 more years after this one on his existing contract, so certainly going to be taking him well into his late 30s here. He'll be 39, almost 40 before the contract is expired. They already have a mega long-term deal like that with Shea Weber on the books, so might not be something that Habs fans might want to see the team do. I'm not really sure, but ultimately Vlasic has been regarded as one of the better defensive defenders around the NHL for a long time. He's proved to be very durable. He's approaching 1,000 NHL games, which he will reach later this season. You can usually bank on 25 to 35 points from the offensive side of things, but he's a pretty good stay-at-home guy who can defend well and would certainly be a perfect type of defender that they would be looking for. Of course, like I said, the age into contract might be the main deterrent that fans may not want to see that, but ultimately he is the kind of player that I really feel would be a huge help to the organization. Now, of course, Vlasic's originally from the province of Quebec as well, so that may be appealing to him to go to Montreal. Then again, it may not. It seems like there's different players have different opinions and feelings on that type of thing. Obviously, playing in Montreal is something that a lot of players consider to be an honor, while others prefer to be out of the spotlight and don't want all the media attention, everything, and all the pressure that comes with playing in such a hockey hotbed, especially after playing so long in San Jose, where he's kind of flying under the radar for all this time. It may or may not be something he's interested in. Like I said, I really don't know what his personal feelings would be, but ultimately, like I said, I do think he'd be a great addition. The Sharks ultimately have some issues with goaltending. They've had inconsistencies between Martin Jones and Aaron Dell. They obviously had some issues with forwards. They had some injury issues. They signed Patrick Marleau. He got off to a decent start with them, but will they be looking for other help either in goal or up front within the forward group? It's certainly a possibility. I don't think they'd be looking to add anything significant on the blue line as long as they have guys like Burns and Karlsson on long-term expensive contracts back there. So trading Vlasic would certainly free up a lot of space and give them a lot more flexibility to make other moves as well. So to some degree, this trade would kind of make sense. I can see how it could possibly help both clubs. Montreal, like I said, would have a lot of assets that the Sharks might find intriguing, and at the same time, adding an experienced defender of his capability would certainly be a huge help as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this possibility. If the Montreal Canadiens were to be able to make a trade with the San Jose Sharks and bring on Marc Edward Vlasic as a top 4 left shot defenseman, what would your thoughts be? Do you think his age and his contract would be the main deterrent, or do you think that would be okay given the fact that he's been such a durable defender throughout his career? Now, of course, the other possibility here comes from Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts blog, where he says that the Pittsburgh Penguins, as we've discussed on numerous occasions, are definitely looking to move a blue liner. They have too many guys back there on NHL contracts, and at some point, sometime soon, more than likely, at least one, if not maybe 2 of their defenders are likely going to be traded out. The possibilities exist to be Jack Johnson, Erik Branson, or even Jusso Rikkola. Now, I've seen some Pens fans react to the possibility of trading Rikkola as something that they wouldn't want to see. Rikkola is a pretty decent young defenseman, but right now he's not getting an opportunity. He's been a healthy scratch for most of this season. He's only played in 1 NHL game this year. Rikkola was an undrafted defenseman playing over in Liiga in Finland for a long time. He's 25 years old, soon to be 26 in November. Came over last season, played in 37 games for the Penguins, put up 5 points, had a decent year, and I think a lot of Pens fans were optimistic about the future. They re-signed him to another 1-year contract where he's making $850K. He would be a pending RFA after this season. So we're talking about 2 very, very different defensemen here. You get Vlasic, who's very experienced on a more expensive contract, and then you get Rikkola, who's basically earning like an ELC type of deal and would certainly give them a lot more cap flexibility, but would he really be the answer? I don't know if we can say with any kind of certainty that he would be able to solidify a top 4 defense in Montreal. If you look at the Penguins blue line and he's not a solid top 4 defenseman there, why would he be a solid top 4 defenseman in Montreal? I can understand their interest in him. Obviously, they see long-term potential, but I don't really think he would be the long-term answer to the top 4 that they're really looking for. We've even had comments from Claude Julien so far, even earlier in the preseason, indicating that a left shot defenseman with experience and who can defend well would be somebody who they would really like to add to this organization. So I don't really see Rikkola being that guy, but at the same time, I do see their intrigue in him for the possibility of what he can provide in the future as he continues to get better and develop. Like I said, he's on a short-term contract. There's not a lot of risk involved. The asking price from the Penguins likely wouldn't be a whole lot. They could probably accomplish that with a draft pick or 2, something to that effect. So obviously, might be an interesting move for Montreal. But of course, the bigger piece of the information here today was their apparent desire and interest in Marc Edward Vlasic. I said, we'll see how things go if they continue to scout the San Jose Sharks. It might be a deal that might be difficult to do given the fact he's got a no-trade clause, but it's certainly something to keep your eye on. When you see teams scouting each other quite heavily, there's certainly interest in that effect, and they're likely looking at a particular type of player. Given everything in Montreal, it certainly does make sense that he would be a guy that would be on their radar. but I guess only time will tell. But of course, as always, especially if you're a Montreal fan, I want to know what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on the Montreal blue line, and what type of defender do you think would be best suited for them to add to really solidify things and make sure they become a playoff team and a much stronger contender? If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.